Nisnik of the WINS MSc Events Subcommittee, co-hosting this event with Betsy Vasquez of the Diversity Subcommittee. So thank you guys all for coming. We're really happy that you all are here. All right, next slide. So if you have not already, we would advise you all to sign up for the WINS medical student roster. So go ahead and scan this QR code to stay up to date with our events, announcements, and opportunities. We've also posted the link in the chat. Okay, so here is an overview of our agenda tonight. So we're going to start out with an overview of Hispanic heritage and its importance and significance. We're then going to introduce our panelists, followed by some preset discussion questions. Throughout the presentation, please be thinking of questions you would like to ask our panelists. As questions come in preparation for the open Q&A, please send those to me in a direct Zoom message. You can send them direct to Taylor Nisnik. And then we'll finish up with some announcements and last minute thank yous and conclusions.
Okay, hi everyone. So like Taylor said, I'm Betsy, and we want to welcome you all and thank you for joining us this evening on behalf of Women in Neurosurgery. So it's truly an honor to be here today during Hispanic Heritage Month. This is a time when we celebrate the incredible contributions and rich history of Hispanic and Latino Americans in this country. Since 1988, from September 15th to October 15th, we have reflected on how our communities have shaped this nation, but we also recognize how far we have yet to go, especially in fields like medicine and neurosurgery. There are nearly 65 million Hispanic people in the US, making up about 19% of the population, and yet we see such a stark contrast in our healthcare workforce, with only 6.9% of doctors as Latinos, an even smaller proportion when we focus on Latina women, who make up just 3% of all doctors. So these numbers shrink even further when we look at the fields of neurosurgery. In neurosurgery, women are vastly underrepresented, making up just 8% of all neurosurgeons. And within that 8%, Latina women comprise 3.4%, which turns out to be less than 1% of all neurosurgeons. So why does this matter? Research has shown that patients often feel more comfortable, heard, and supported when treated by someone who understands their background. Cultural and linguistic concordance between physicians and patients can build trust, improve communication, and even lead to better health outcomes. So tonight, we would like to highlight these trailblazing Latina neurosurgeons who have each forged their own path in the field. And as we listen to their unique perspectives, I hope we can all leave feeling inspired to keep pushing forward and work towards amplifying diverse voices in the field. So without further ado, I'm thrilled to introduce our distinguished panelists for the night. Dr. Juanita Garces completed her medicine with distinction degree from the University of Texas Southwestern Medical Center in Dallas, Texas. She then pursued neurosurgery training at Tulane Ochsner Medical Center in New Orleans, followed by a fellowship focused on complex spine and adult scoliosis at the University of Virginia. Currently, Dr. Garces specializes in minimally invasive spine surgeries at Texas Neurospine Surgery in San Antonio, Texas. Dr. Evelyn Teresa Hidalgo received her medical degree from Bern University in Switzerland. Following medical school, she completed her neurosurgery residence in Kantonsbau, Aarau in Switzerland. She completed a fellowship in pediatric neurosurgery at NYU Grossman School of Medicine, where she currently serves as assistant professor in the Department of Neurosurgery, as well as director of clinical research in the pediatric neurosurgery department. A native of Colombia, Dr. Carolina Sandoval Garcia received her medical degree from Universidad del Rosario in Bogotá. Following medical school, she completed her neurological surgery residency at the University of Wisconsin Hospital and Clinic and a fellowship in pediatric neurosurgery at the University of Miami, Nicholas Children's Hospital. Currently, Dr. Sandoval Garcia is a pediatric neurosurgeon, assistant professor, and assistant director of the neurosurgery residency program at the University of Minnesota in Minneapolis. So with this, I'd like to take the time to thank our panelists once more for joining us today.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks.
Yes, thank you for organizing this.
Okay. So let's jump right into our first question. So tell us about your journey to neurosurgery and how your identity as a Hispanic/Latinx woman has impacted that journey. Dr. Garces, do you want to begin?
Sure, yeah. So I grew up as a migrant worker in South Texas, actually. We migrated all over the United States picking crops. I have 4 brothers, and when I got to high school, I stayed behind. My brothers continued to travel up as migrant workers, and my mom and I stayed behind so that I could finish high school, but also I was in line for valedictorian in my class. And thankfully, I was able to get valedictorian and go to school. That's important, of course, because in Texas, if you are valedictorian, or at least when I graduated high school, the top 10% were able to get into college, but valedictorians at the UT system, which is where I went to college, had their first year of tuition paid for. I can't pay for school. So that was one of the ways that I was able to at least get in the door for college. And as far as neurosurgery, that was always my intention to pursue neurosurgery. So in college, of course, I did everything that I needed to. I had all sorts of research. I had publications. I had neuroscience as my degree, and several other degrees, actually. I ended up graduating with 3 bachelors. And then finally made it to medical school. As far as, how has my Hispanic roots affected that? Of course, the migrant worker aspect of it was very tough. And, all 4 of my brothers graduated. I helped them, but we all got through college or high school. And of the 5 of us, I was the only one that went to school, that went to college after that. Unfortunately, right, a migrant worker is not expected to go to school. It's not expected to pursue any secondary careers. But growing up and seeing my culture, seeing that nobody went to school, nobody went to college, and everyone around me in South Texas, that was just the norm, right? I knew I had to get out. I had to get out of South Texas. I had to go and pursue some career, which again, at that point, I already knew this is what I wanted to do. Pursue a career that was going to help me and my family get out of that cycle. And so, I went to college. I had a full-time job. I had full-time research, and I had full-time workload. Sometimes I slept, but it was just busy, and it was very tough. When I went to medical school, similar situation. I had to work. I had a job, even though my medical school specifically said you weren't supposed to have a job. I can't not have a job. I needed to pay for things, right? And so I did. And, I was able to get through medical school and go to residency. Once in residency, I just like you said a second ago, there's not that many of us. There's not that many Hispanics to begin with. And then beyond that, not many Hispanic females. And so I associated more with the Black community, right? So the other minority group, the Asian community, everyone else who was a minority, because all of us are underrepresented, unfortunately. How that has impacted kind of overall, there's going to be some questions down the road about the importance of having that communication and that just knowing your patients, right? Your patients who are Hispanic, your patients who are your mom and your aunts and your cousins, and when they say things to you, what they mean, right? That cultural impact is very important, because those patients had been to see other doctors, and for their spine issues and their scoliosis or whatever else that I see them for, and maybe they were missed for whatever reason. It's very important. We'll talk about that later, but it's very important to represent our community. I was working in West Virginia for a few years after I graduated from my fellowship, after I finished my fellowship, but I knew that I needed to come back home. In West Virginia, I felt like I wasn't being used to my full potential because I wasn't helping my community. And so the entire 4 or 5 years I spent there, I only saw one Latin person there. And it wasn't even my patient. It was my partner's patient that I helped them with, because I speak fluent Spanish. And so I was able to assist with one patient. And since moving to Texas, back to my community, at least 70% of my clinic is Spanish, and at least half of those are Spanish only. And I'm having full on conversations with them in Spanish, and they are extremely grateful for that. So, you know, yeah, every one of us would be grateful to see ourselves in our doctors. Just, you know, women in general, the lack of female doctors in general, but then within the neurosurgical community, it is just so rare. And every single patient that I see, of course, is going to compliment me, but also thank me, because they finally have somebody that they can relate to, and they finally have somebody that can understand them with certain things that they say that we understand, but others might not. So yeah, that's kind of a short summary of my journey to where I am today, and I'm excited to be here.
Thank you. Dr. Sandoval Garcia or Dr. Hidalgo?
Sure, I'll go next. So my journey to neurosurgery was essentially somewhat kind of composed of somewhat late decisions in my career. I was born, raised, went to med school in Colombia, as you mentioned, lived my whole life in Bogota, and during my final year of med school, I got interested in neurosurgery. And during that time, I also came to the US to do a rotation and realized that I wanted to get my neurosurgical training here in the States. I think throughout this journey, what I have seen is I've been really lucky and blessed to have fantastic mentors, but I haven't really seen a lot of mentors that kind of look like me, or I have not really seen my community represented within our professional kind of realm. And so I feel, given those circumstances, and you already alluded to how the demographic distribution within our specialty is really not mirroring the current makeup of the United States, I just felt a very strong kind of responsibility to become a mentor and kind of pave the way for this situation to eventually change. And so I feel like that's one of the main ways in which my identity has kind of shaped my journey within neurosurgery. I think it is really critical for us, unfortunately, to be the advocates for our own communities and to really try to work on diversifying neurosurgery, hopefully from positions of leadership, where we can really just provide not only like strong kind of role model types of opportunities, but also really improve things like recruitment, retention, promotion of many groups, underrepresented minorities in general, not necessarily just the Hispanic community. And I think that in general, I see it as when you start doing something that might not be very common or very easy, you can kind of begrudge the next generation and think like they're gonna have it so easy, I never had this. Or you can become the type of person that's like, maybe I'm gonna make it easy for that next generation and try to make them see that there are people that look like them. And so you can choose either of the two. I'm hoping that I kind of feel more closely and more aligned with doing the latter and really becoming that kind of that ally and that friend that can help advance further generations.
This is so interesting because both of your story are so different from mine, and at the same time, I had so many experiences that were similar and that reflect. So I grew up in Germany. My father, I'm not a Latina. I'm Hispanic. My mother is from Switzerland. My father is from Spain. I grew up in Germany, you know, always being the immigrant and from somewhere. And then I did my training in Switzerland. And when I came to New York and for the fellowship, it was for the first time that for me, the population was that I noticed this underrepresentation of the population. And my affinity to Latin America comes from very early on. My Swiss mother only spoke Spanish with me, so we could speak with our Spanish family. So Spanish was my first language. And when I started to go to med school, I was already interested in global health. And as a native Spanish speaker, it was clear I was going to go to Latin America. And in Switzerland, medical school and during residency, you have the opportunity to do your internships and electives abroad. So I went to a lot of countries. I took full advantage of that. I went to Cuba, I went to Colombia. Later on, I went to Panama, Mexico. I spent some time as well then as an attending in Ecuador. And after all that, I came to New York and I noticed there was no pediatric neurosurgeon in New York that speaks Spanish. And I was completely in shock. I couldn't believe that. And it was kind of a natural thing now as well. If I think about my patients, even though I specialize in epilepsy surgery, about 60 to 70% of my patients are as well Spanish speaking. It was a natural thing for me to take over kind of Bellevue, the public hospital where we have a lot of migrants now.
Mm.
And because I was able, to work or to observe in so many countries, the language that that when you have a translator on the phone and what the mother explains to you, those are very two different things.
Mhm.
And so many patients come to me, and for the first time, I can explain to them that actually the disease that their child has is a different one than they thought the whole time, because there are so many misunderstandings. And I compare it often here to other communities that have this, when I think of, for example, we have here a big Jewish community as well, and that they have their own health system. They have these advisors that they can ask. The Hispanic community does not have that, and a lot of families that don't know where to go to get real information. And it saddens me because sometimes I'm like the third opinion, and it is just for the first time that somebody was able to explain to the family what the real disease is, and often that the disease is not that bad. And I think we are going to go into that, but that kind of impacted my journey in neurosurgery.
Thank you so much, each of you, for telling us a little bit about your journey. So for our second question, what challenges have you faced throughout your career, and how did you overcome them? Dr. Sandoval Garcia, you want to start?
Sure. So I think there's kind of a series of challenges that are kind of interculturally somewhat common to all of us, and those may not be kind of the thing that first came to mind when I was thinking around this topic of being Hispanic or Latina, but I just thought that in general, overcoming any challenge just takes, tried as it may sound, it's just about kind of resilience and grit. And I think I had mentioned this, I was fortunate to have developed my career in general in institutions where like I've felt that they value and promote diversity and a multicultural environment. But when we start extending our circle outside to maybe our patients, sometimes the farther away they come from, like urban centers or their family members, the situation then can be a little bit more challenging when navigating aspects about just cultural misunderstandings or flat out like things like discrimination. And so I've felt small kind of details and what would be now kind of considered like, say, microaggressions and things like that when you're talking to a patient. And for example, I use the metric system and I talk about like, how big is my incision? And I reply like, hey, this many centimeters. And they reply in a really angry fashion, like, give it to me in inches, you're in the States. That kind of thing may not mean a lot, but the kind of the aggregate of situations like that constantly makes you feel like somehow you might not kind of fit in, or you might not really be a part of the group as you felt you were. And so whenever it's been kind of silly, almost unimportant things like that, or just bigger issues about just difficulties and hardship, I think in general, you show up every day, you try to, like, that you're doing things right, and you try to start with what you have and just continue kind of working and showing that you can do it. And that's really the way I've been able to overcome larger challenges and also smaller, kind of more trivial situations like this within my career.
Thank you. Dr. Hidalgo?
I think similar to that, I'm an international medical graduate, and I never knew what this really means until it hit me. I'm not in an institution that, and I say that openly, that on an attending level has valued diversity or women representation. I was the only female neurosurgeon out of 25 for a long time.
Oh.
And now, thankfully, Dr. Saris joined me. And we have one Black neurosurgeon. So I wouldn't say I'm in an institution that supports that. We support it very much in our residents, and we have a few Latino residents, and it's great, and we have a lot of women. But I did notice, I think at the beginning that I was, that I really had to pave my way, and I had to be insistent, and I had to be consistent, and I probably had to show more than others what my value was and what the quality of my work was, and the lack of female examples throughout my career. When I was a resident, there were no women with families and with a career in that way, neither in my country, and I didn't know of a lot of them in other countries. And that made it for sure harder. I was very lucky that I had female residents that started with me, and we were very supportive one to another. And these are still friendships that I have nowadays. But it has been difficult to see your own value. And what Dr. Garces said before, that you see yourself represented, or that you find friends in other minority groups, that is something that I did not expect. And I found as well, they invited me immediately to this SEEDS mentoring group for a minority, and I was like, guys, I really, are you sure? And you look at me, I felt that I met a lot of people and women there that were big support, and had exactly, Dr. Sandoval, what you said, has experienced those microaggressions in the way. I haven't gotten the metric system thing yet. But I have to say, I probably have suffered less microaggressions because I have a German accent than a Spanish one. I'm pretty convinced of that. There is...
Dr. Garces?
Yeah, so to add on a little bit, Evelyn, to what you were saying earlier about having to really prove yourself more, that's something that I've seen throughout my whole career, even residency, actually. My mentors were all male, except for one female. She was in a different hospital, so I didn't work with her as much, but it was very obvious how I was treated different than my colleagues, my residents. If I got asked a question, it was, and I maybe got half of it or something. I was treated differently. I was put down differently, yeah. And it was, one of my residency partners. She's a female too, and at one point they were trying to get her out of the system, get her out of the residency program. And at no point was there appropriate feedback to her, the kind of feedback that would have been given to a male. But also, she was one of the brightest people I know, one of the smartest girls I know. And she's an amazing neurosurgeon now. But again, she and I had to constantly prove ourselves. Even now, when I'm now a full on board certified neurosurgeon, and I get treated differently with my own, the nurses or in the operating room. I've had at least 2 times where I've had to elevate a male nurse behaving inappropriately with me, that they would never, absolutely never have done that to any of my male partners or any of the other male surgeons in the same setting, in the same hospital. Never, never. And I mean, I've had hands laid on me by male doctors before. I've had male doctors yell, or not doctors, nurses, male nurses yell at me because how dare I give orders? You know, it's a lot of things like that. There's definitely microaggression, and then there's very obvious, blatant disrespect. And that respect, it's something that to a male doctor, and we'll all see this, I'm sure we've all seen it, to a male doctor, it's just given. But for us females, we have to earn it. And it's something that needs to change. And as more of us make it into the field, make it into the just the medical system in general, that's going to change. Some areas need it more than others, and some areas have it more than others, right? And so, for example, now here in San Antonio, I'm not a minority in the sense of my Hispanic side, because my partners, the majority of us are Hispanic. And as far as females, there's 2 of us in my group that are females. And both of us were labeled neurologists when we first got here, even though both of us are neurosurgeons. She was here a few years before I got here. And when it happened to me, she was like, oh, hey, me too. So, you know, that's the kind of microaggression part of it, where I'm a female, I can't be a neurosurgeon, right? It's just not normal. It's not common.
Google has me as a peds neurologist. I haven't changed it yet. I don't know if it is a microaggression. I think it's, you know,
it's blatant aggression.
Yeah,
honestly. And how do you overcome them? The most important thing is to continue to hold yourself together, to keep yourself together. You cannot be that one person that explodes. You know, even when people have, again, laid hands on me, you just got to keep her cool, because it's so easy for any of them. They're just, I say this to my PAs, they're looking for one reason to justify everything that they think about you, right?
And you don't want to be the angry woman.
Yes,
that is exactly the label you're trying. But I really think this has changed and is really changing. I haven't seen it in the last years.
I had it done 3 months ago.
Oh shit. I'm sorry.
This is very common, unfortunately. You know, and
come to a democratic state.
Yes, exactly. Yes, exactly.
Changes wherever you are, and it also overall, I think, has improved. Honestly,
yes,
the trend
that's
is
true.
that it's getting better.
Because
it is way different.
Because your residents see you.
Yeah.
Right. And they see how you behave, and they see, and you know, in discussions like this, that it is possible. I felt very honored when I had a fellow from another subspecialty tell me, I'm going to finish my fellowship now, and I hope I can be as strong as you are in the OR. And she's also Hispanic. And I really, you know, I think this was one of the biggest things anybody has ever told me, because I was like, oh my God, so many years of exactly holding yourself together. Not being overly aggressive, but I think firm is the word, you know, really stern or firm, or however this is, you know.
Because you have to respect yourself, and you have to, in some situations, demand that respect.
Correct.
That, like I said, it's not just given to us the way it is for the men. So that's definitely something that we are seeing less and less, and it's because of this. It's because of our group. It's because of us here. And you know, Carolina, like you said a second ago, I am hoping to make it easier for those who are coming after me. I try to help other females, whatever race, and of course my Hispanic females, you know, inviting them to the operating room, inviting them to my clinic, and showing them that there are challenges that we're all going to face, especially females wanting to have a family, for example, all of those other things. And then just to show them that it is possible. I've had many medical students say, well, I've been told I can either be a surgeon or a mom, and I can't be both, right? And so I'm
Oh,
both.
yes.
Yeah.
I,
So
there's still
Go
the misconceptions in medical students that, you know, if you want a family, you better don't go into neurosurgery.
yeah.
Thank
And
you
that's
guys so much for talking about your challenges. Yeah, I can't imagine some of these things. So for our third question, in what ways has your Hispanic heritage been an asset or played a meaningful role in your career journey? Dr. Hidalgo, do you want to start this one?
sure. I am going to keep it very short because I think I explained it. It was already through the other question. For me, it was really a benefit, I have to say, and to be Hispanic or to speak Spanish fluently and to know different cultures of Latin America, or sometimes even know the hospitals or even know the neurosurgeons over there. I've been able, you know, to provide for my Dominican patients the information who will follow up, who will, you know, with hydrocephalus, with the shunt when they go back or when they go on vacation, or families that are traveling back and forth. So I think this is has been only for me a benefit that I would never have imagined. My mother telling me a million times probably to speak Spanish at home, that it would have had such an impact.
Dr. Garces?
Right. I answered some of this earlier too, but definitely being able to see yourself in your patients and being able to have your patients see you as more than just a doctor, you know, a family member who they can trust. And you know, the two first patients I saw here when I moved to San Antonio were both females who had been dismissed their whole lives, 29 and 31. One of them with a tethered cord, who was now incontinent and was, I mean, all of these myelopathic symptoms that I untethered her at the age of 29. You know, that's something that was missed. You know, she'd had symptoms her whole life. And then the other one, a horrible Chiari malformation with a syrinx. And if for some of our med students, you know what a syrinx is, of course, fluid in the spinal canal. Horrible myelopathic symptoms also, 31, missed her whole life. And, you know, she's sitting in my office crying, saying, I just thought I was told many, many times, this is just normal. This is just how it's supposed to be. And that's unfortunately not the case. And both of these girls, thankfully, are doing great. They're over a year out and they're both doing great. Their lives have changed. And so that is very meaningful to me, because one of them Hispanic, the other one not, but both females. And that's something that we all see, you know, as far as the female in the medical system in all fields, not just neurosurgery. But that's something that also we're hoping to change.
Dr. Sandoval Garcia?
With this one, I think I'll echo what Evelyn and Juanita just said. It's to me the most important asset is really that connection, that unique cultural perspective that leads to you maybe being able to kind of anticipate some of the patient's needs, or just connect in ways where I think we've all felt it, as good a job as our interpreters and translators want to do in clinic. There's just something different about being able to respond, react, empathize with someone and communicate directly. And just that part of your career becomes very rewarding, not necessarily because I think all of my partners would like say do a terrible job or necessarily like dismiss all of my patients' concerns, but because you get to see it in the patients, that kind of sigh of relief when they're like, oh, you speak Spanish. Like first they're shocked that someone can speak Spanish, then
Right.
they are going to be their neurosurgeon, but then it's actually just a much more like a just closer relationship. And there's a growing body of research behind this whole racial concordance things, where it's like better outcomes, people just adhere to treatments, communicate better, it's just more efficient. So I feel clearly that side of Hispanic heritage has a very rewarding side to all of us practice. And I have personally, like say, have practiced mostly in Midwestern states where amongst the faculty, we've been surprisingly diverse, even though I can't say that I have another fellow Latina faculty member, but at least kind of just coming from different places in the world. And then our Latino population might not be, or our Hispanic population might not be necessarily as large as, say, California, Texas, even New York. But we do have a surprisingly growing number, just like everywhere else in the US, of Hispanic population. And so it's kind of even more important in states where it's surprisingly high. But then I trained in Miami for a year, and I was even more shocked to see how, like, the number of attendings that actually spoke Spanish when our population was 80% Spanish speaking only. And you would not believe how little Spanish most of them spoke. And so that actually became even more shocking, that in a place where I thought, here you have to, like, to survive, like, you have to speak Spanish, and that wasn't the case. So it's different all across the US, but I feel it's been a very meaningful part of my career to be able to connect, especially with patients in places that I've been serving.
It's a disservice to the patients when we can't communicate well with them.
Absolutely.
Correct.
Awesome. Thank you guys for sharing that. So for our fourth question, what advice would you give to women interested in neurosurgery, particularly to women who share your same background? So Dr. Garces, you want to start this one?
Sure. I really hope that we can not convince, but really nudge and help other females who are interested in neurosurgery to know that they can do it, that we can do it. We've done it. My husband was showing me about the fastest person to run whatever in the Olympics was 4 minutes. That was the fastest person. It was after, and this was like in the 80s. And after that number was established, that record has been beaten over 2,000 times since then, right? And so we just needed that one person to show that you could do something that was extreme at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what we are. We are extreme. There aren't that many of us at all. So if you're interested in neurosurgery, the biggest advice I can give you is go for it. Do it. Try. There's going to be challenges, of course, but that's why we're here, to help you with those challenges. And definitely, please reach out. We are, I'm speaking for myself, and I'm sure Evelyn and Carolina hopefully share this too, but any one of us would be more than happy to give you advice, to help you in any way that we can, to get you here. Because not only do we need more females in general in this, in the field of medicine as a whole, but definitely in the field of neurosurgery, women as a whole in neurosurgery, there's not that many of us. And like I just shared, those two females that I'd seen, they had seen other neurosurgeons before, but I was the first female they'd seen. And they both said to me, you're the first one who's listened. You're the first one who's sent them for an image that actually showed the problem they'd had. No one had even imaged them before.
Yeah.
It's why, they weren't listening to them. And we see this all the time. Spanish speaking, right? Like we've said already, it is crucial for our population. I've seen many times where, for example, when I was a student, where the translator was translating completely different, because I was a med student, but the translator is not in the medical field. They're just translators. So they were translating completely wrong. And I had I was a first year med student. I didn't know that at that time, I didn't have the courage to stand up for the family. And it wasn't until we left the room that I pulled the attending aside and I said, hey, actually, the family didn't understand what you just said. They think this, and this, when what you said was completely different. I'm just letting you know the translator got it wrong. And so we had to walk back in there and explain it again to the family. But I happened to be there. I mean, how many times does this happen on a daily basis to all our family members, right? To my mom, when she goes to see a doctor, my mom doesn't speak English, right? And so this is the kind of situation that I unfortunately saw, and why it's crucial that we try. And again, we're here to help.
Thank you, Dr. Garces. Dr. Hidalgo?
Yes, I mean, I completely echo this. I think first, yes, we've done it. And although we say, you know, this was hard and this was hard, first, for you, it's going to be a little bit easier. Second, you will have people to reach out to. And really, what supported me a lot during this journey was my fellow female residents. Just kind of, if you experience you are going through some hardship, like imposter syndrome, for example, this is a real thing. And if you are Hispanic or Latino, what you
Oh, yeah.
look a little bit even more different, perhaps, than your other residents are already. It's already a female. You are going to feel that. It's so important that you share in that moment that feeling that you shared with somebody that is in a similar situation. You will see the experience exactly the same. I always do the joke. The first 5 years of our residency, my friend and I, we always said to each other, we didn't know what imposter syndrome is. I didn't even know that this is a term. We always said to each other, they're gonna notice that we don't know anything. They're gonna feel, you know, they're going to detect us. This is not right. Us in this place, it doesn't feel right. Something is off. And it really took us almost into attending mode that we were like, yes, we do know things and we did the right decisions and we were the best residents and we took care of our patients. And because we communicated so much, and it takes a lot to get to this feeling of self-worth and this feeling of being self-assured and knowing this is my value and this is my place. So, you know, don't be afraid to share these feelings with your friends, with your colleagues. We've all gone through this. We really know what it is, and we still experience it sometimes. Sometimes I go to one of those meetings and I see everybody has this super tailored suit and whatever. And at the beginning, I was also wearing those suits, trying, you know, to look. And I was like, I don't want to wear a suit. This is not me. That is not my style. And I look anyhow different. So let's embrace it. But these are a lot of steps. So just take the courage, go through it. We've all gone through it. And it's at the end of the day, it's a lot of fun. We all love our profession. That's why we are here. I really love that running the fastest. Sure, we all can do it.
Yeah.
And you don't even need to be the fastest.
Yeah.
Just being there in the field of the fastest is good.
Dr. Sandoval?
So one piece of advice that I think honestly doesn't necessarily deal with being Hispanic, but it's the advice that I tell everyone when you're wondering whether this is the right career for you or not, is advice that was passed on to me. It's not even my wisdom by any means, but just if you think that you want to or could do something else besides neurosurgery, then explore that, consider that, don't commit to this, because you really have to want to absolutely do neurosurgery and this be your passion, your kind of main goal to take on all of those challenges that we're talking about. Once that's the case, and if you really kind of set a clear goal and that really aligns with your strengths and your real passion, then you're gonna make it. It's kind of what we just said. Now, making the peace with the fact that maybe you're going to be held to a different standard as a foreign medical graduate, as an immigrant, as many other roles that we adopt in life, that acceptance process will make you really kind of enjoy that ride of how challenging and how difficult this career is. And then ultimately, the other thing that has really helped me think of this is when I go into a room and sometimes I see how parents look like, oh, wow, so this is the neurosurgeon, like they're expecting this like bearded, gray haired man come in and then it's me. I also see, and this might be just a particularly rewarding side of Evelyn and my career, where we get to see the kids. And then I get to think of them and the way in which for them it's really not going to be weird or different. They will never have that conception that a neurosurgeon has to be a white male. And so I feel like whether we see it or not, the very fact that we've come this far, that we're having this seminar right now, that we are like, say, aggregate as a group, that we just discuss these things, means that things are changing. And so my advice would be, know that people before us, older than all of us here in this panel, have already kind of been trailblazers and have paved the way for us to really kind of make it, as Evelyn and Juanita were saying, it's doable. It can happen. We did it, you can do it too. It's going to happen if you want to do it. Know that there will be challenges and hurdles and that there's always people like us and many others that will be able to help you along the way.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you, Dr. Garces. Thank you, Dr. Sandoval Garcia, and thank you, Dr. Hidalgo. I think your stories and thank you for sharing. And I think what you guys shared today definitely resonates with me, and I'm sure resonates with other people in the audience as well. So with that being said.